All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Central Focus podcast. Today we have a very special guest. I'm probably going to say that every week, but this guy, he's a very, very good friend of mine, and God has sort of forced our paths to cross each other at one point or another over the last probably decade, honestly, at one point or another. And it's just been really cool. I've built such a good friendship with him. I want to share a little bit about him. He was heavily involved in campus ministry for close to a decade. He actually used to lead at Rutgers University and among other places throughout his sort of tenure. But he was the lead minister at Rutgers, where my wife and I now currently lead. And, he is a man that truly loves God. If I've come to know him and I've come to know anything about him, he really does love God. And it's something I've come to truly admire about him. And although right now he's not currently in full-time ministry, that his work in the Lord has not stopped, he's helped to sort of create and implement the purity ministry for our sort of immediate family of churches here in Central Jersey. Alongside another brother, but he's still doing amazing things for God and his kingdom. And, that's just sort of scratching the surface as to all that he's really involved in. He is the CEO of Football Cleat Heat brand, which is the #1 Instagram reseller of both new and used cleats. He has serviced over 90 NFL clients and has serviced players on all 32 NFL teams, which is pretty dope. Again, he has turned his passion into his job. He is married to my wife and I's good friend, the lovely Nobi Del Valle, for 2 years now. And, he is a man of many talents. And I know, brother, you are using your talents to serve God and his kingdom. And I want to welcome you, our guest for today, Charles Del Valle. Welcome, brother.
Wow, Caesar, man. Thank you so much. What an introduction. I mean, woo. Brother, you got me fired up, man, because I'm ready to share. I'm ready to
I love that.
talk it up, man. And for those who are listening, man, I'm so grateful that you're here. Caesar's doing something amazing. He has a vision on his heart, and this podcast is one of the ways he's starting it. And I just want to say, man, tune in because it's going to be some great stuff throughout the people that he's going to be sharing with. So, but thanks so much for the intro, bro. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you. So I'm trying to do something where I kind of start and do something a little lighthearted. So on the show notes, you probably saw the little icebreaker. Okay. I love these blind rankings. And so essentially what will happen is I'm going to have you blind rank without knowing what comes next. I'm going to give you a food, and you're going to have to put it in order that you think is best without knowing what comes next. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be 1 through 5. All right. So I want you to rank these 5 Spanish foods without knowing what comes next. Okay. The first one I want to give to you is tostones. Where are you going to put that on your list? 1 through 5, tostones.
4.
4. Okay.
I'm going to go with 4. I'm going to go with 4.
Okay. Did you grow up eating tostones?
I did. My mom and my grandmother made those probably once a week, to be honest. I mean, they love tostones, and we had the maduros as well. So we had all different types of plantains. So
dope. Okay. Cool. All right. So that's at 4. All right. Here's the next one. I don't know if this is more Dominican than Puerto Rican, but you probably have either had it or heard of it, but sancocho. Have you heard of that?
Sancocho, yeah, that's a soup. Yeah, brother.
Yeah.
So sancocho, I'm probably gonna have to go. I'll probably go 5.
5. Okay.
So
some other things on you. Yeah. Okay. So you got tostones at 4, sancocho at 5. Okay. All right. So the next thing I'm gonna give to you is pernil. Pernil, that's pork shoulder for anybody.
See, I had to save room for some good stuff that was gonna come up. So pernil, right. I have to put as number 2. I'll put that as number 2.
Number 2. Solid. Number two.
That
That's
is,
solid,
yeah,
man. You look, man,
yeah.
and look, because I, married to a Puerto Rican myself. I know that the seasoning is different, but they're both equally just amazing.
Oh, absolutely. Hands
Yeah.
down.
All right. So the next one I'm going to give you are plátano maduros. Plátano, that's sweet plantains. Plátano maduros. Where you putting that?
I'll put that as number 3.
Number 3. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right then. So the last one, which obviously is inevitably going to number 1, is going to be arroz con habichuela.
Let's go, baby. Woo! Yeah, I'm happy with that. Arroz con habichuela is probably like one of my favorite dishes that my mom makes. It is absolutely delicious. So I'm really happy. You know what I thought it was gonna be? I thought it was gonna be arroz con gandules. I was keeping arroz con gandules as number 1. So
for number 1,
I was gonna risk it all. I was gonna risk it all, man. But yeah, arroz con habichuela, man. Oh, as a matter of fact, I think I might find a Spanish restaurant around me and go pick that up.
And hit one up, right? I got it on your mind now.
It's been a while. Yeah. Definitely.
Dope, man. Dope. Cool. Yeah, so for me, I probably would go pernil, arroz con habichuela, tostones, maduros. Tostones, maduros, then sancocho. All really good stuff. All stuff that I love, but that's probably what my list would be. Cool. Well, thank you for...
Nice. Look like we got the top 2.
Yeah. Appreciate you indulging me there. So we could jump into our topic for today. For all those listening, our topic is going to be on Christian identity and mental health. All right, Christian identity and mental health. So first, I want to just ask you, can you share a little bit with me how you got involved in campus ministry? And again, this can involve whatever you want to include in the story. But tell me how you got involved in the campus ministry.
Yeah. Well, back in 2013, this is going almost 11 years ago now. I didn't even believe in God at the time yet. I didn't even have a faith, or I wasn't a Christian or anything like that yet. So when I moved from Chicago, because I was playing college football there, had an injury, so I had to move to Jersey, and then William Patterson University became the school that I went to. So I went there, and I was just searching for a different purpose. I lost one of my dreams was to play in the NFL, play college football my 4 years. That didn't happen. So I'm like, well, what am I going to do now? I've trained, I've studied, I've done so much in my life up until this point for football. So, but little did I know, I wasn't really looking for something to do. I was looking for someone to become, but I wasn't really aware of that yet. And so when I got to William Patterson, there was a guy named Rob Novak. And Rob, if you're listening, what's up, brother? So he saw me just walking on campus, just going to a class that I had, and he walked up to me and he invited me to this Bible study. And at first I'm like, well, I don't know this guy. I never met him a day in my life. And he's a complete stranger. So I'm always sketchy. I kind of grew up in the hood. So if somebody walk up to you that you don't know, it's like, hey, yo, what's up? What you doing? But he was cool. He was kind, and he was really interested in like me as far as like what I did, what I studied. He asked me great questions about myself, and you don't really get that a lot. People coming up to you, being interested in what you enjoy, what you like, and just out of the genuineness of trying to know that. So then make long story short, he invited me to a Bible study and a midweek service that was like with a bunch of college students. Went to that like 2 days later, sat down, read the Bible for the first time. It was in Acts chapter 17 where God says that I've set the times and places where you should live, and how he's just been orchestrating my life. And so up until that point, I was like, whoa, this makes a lot of sense. I lost my football career, and I had no idea who I was after that. So then it was the perfect time for me to meet God and to see that scripture and to go, whoa, God, you've been setting me up for this moment. So 2 weeks later, I got baptized and then and decided to become a Christian. And then I realized,
study like every day. Is that what happened? Sorry, not to interrupt.
I studied
every day.
Yeah, pretty much. I studied pretty much every day.
Mm.
Um, and it was the studies that I was having with Rob, but it was also the studies I was having on my alone time. Like I
Mm.
was reading
Wow.
books of the Bible like in a whole day. Like I remember the first book I read
Mm.
was Romans from front to back.
Mm.
Like read the whole thing and was
Mm.
just like,
Wow.
what in the world? I didn't know all these things were in the Bible about like,
Mm.
sometimes you look to the Bible to find out about God, but you also find out about yourself, and it's
Wow.
interesting
Yeah.
how both of those things come in.
Yeah.
But yeah, so two weeks later, got baptized, and then I realized there was only three sisters in Christ that were on the campus at the time, and there was no brothers. Like I was the
Mm.
only guy there, this new fresh Christian that just came out of the waters and didn't have any training in campus ministry, no nothing. All I knew was the scriptures that I was taught when I was reading the scriptures with Rob. That's it. And there was like
Right.
probably like 12 scriptures, 12, 13 scriptures or something like that. And I was like, wait a minute. So since I'm the only guy here, then that means am I the one that's going to be leading this thing? Like am I the one going to kind of be putting the vision out for like campus
Right.
ministry? And I remember I had a conversation with Rob and he was like, hey, what do you feel about like being a Bible talk leader?
Mm.
Someone that's gonna help lead the Christian group here. I was like, what? Are you serious? Like
Mm.
me? Like I just got baptized, and because at the time, I thought I had to have all these different tools, and to a
Right.
degree, there's training that you need, but man, when it comes to campus ministry, you got to learn stuff as you go, man. There's never going to
Mm.
be this like perfect
Yeah.
amount of time you have to like perfect amount of
Right.
information. It's like, yo, dude, you just got to take what you have.
Right.
You have the Holy Spirit and go. That's
Yeah.
all I had, bro. I had my Bible study scriptures and I just was going out inviting people to church, inviting people to our Bible talk discussions. And it's interesting that most of my life as a Christian was doing campus ministry like that. Like I
Mm.
literally got baptized and I was doing campus ministry within 2 days.
Mm.
So, and I
Wow.
didn't, I had no idea what I was doing. All I had was a
Wow.
spirit and my own story.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so that's kind of how that happened.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Dope. Thank you, man. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I think
yep,
a common thing too, especially with athletes, is the identity in sports, and then you have to kind of
for sure.
learn to realize like, oh, like when your whole life is sports, right? I grew up playing basketball. I played a little bit of football. Not like you though. I wasn't like you, but I played a little bit. And I played baseball, and I love sports. Sports was my life. But I had injuries. I had other things that happened, and then you realize like, man, who am I apart from this thing? And so,
Mm,
um,
right.
can you speak to that transition a little bit? That transition from your identity in sports to your identity in Christ.
Yeah, yeah. So football came into my life when I was in middle school. So I had a cousin
Mm.
who we would play backyard football, and he would invite me over to his
Mm.
house, and we'll just play pickup games with a lot of his friends. And I had no interest in football at all at the time. So,
Mm.
but even before that happened, I grew up just most of my life not really knowing who I was to begin with. You know,
Mm.
like I didn't grow up with a father in my life. Like I had my dad, but he wasn't really involved in my life. So there
Mm.
was a lot of those there was that big parental figure that I needed,
Mm.
because I really believe that a father is the one that God has called to help instill an identity into their sons, right?
Mm. Mm.
So when that wasn't there for me in my life, and I had a big void of that, I had a hard time really understanding who I was. So once I started going to school, you start to do things to be liked. You start to do things for affirmation. You start to do things,
Right.
right? Because
Totally.
it's coming from this void that I had, that I just didn't know who I was. So maybe I'll find who I am through becoming what people wanted me to be, right?
Mm.
So then once football came around, um, it was something that, don't get me wrong, like I loved it. It was football is such a crucial part of my life that helped me so much. But because I didn't already establish an identity before sports, that then just filled the void of that place anyway,
Mm.
if that makes
Mm.
sense. Like
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
like I didn't have an identity apart from sports. So whatever came my way just became the identity. And that's
Right.
usually what happens throughout that I learned throughout life is like if you haven't established an identity of just being a son or daughter of God, then something else is going to fill that void.
Mm,
It could be sports, it could be a career, it could be a position, you know, at a job,
that's
whatever
good.
it might be. But for me, what I realized was that sports became, and the reason why sports became that for me was because there's a lot of affirmation in sports. There's a lot of attention. There's a
Yeah.
lot of like, you know, which only fed the void that I had growing up as a
Right.
kid. And so the minute I saw like somebody like my cousin, he believed in me, like, hey, you
Mm,
can do this. And then realizing that there was somebody that believed in me fed that place of like
mm,
wanting to hear that from my dad. So
mm,
so sports became like the father figure for me,
mm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but what happened was as life went on, you start to realize that, oh wait, I am somebody outside of sports.
Mm,
But sometimes the void has to become empty again to realize that, oh snap, I never really found who I was.
mm,
You know,
mm.
and through
Yeah,
life that can
for
be
sure.
replaced over and over and over again with something.
100%.
So yeah, but I would say I didn't know who I was even before sports. Sports
Mm,
became what filled the void that was already there.
mm.
And then what which I wasn't aware of was that but once sports ended, that void was always still there to begin with.
Right.
It just
Right.
only filled it, and I put quotations, filled
Right.
it for a temporary amount of time until that was over.
Right.
And now I'm looking for the next thing, you know? So
Right. Right.
that's
No,
kind of my
man,
my
that's
background.
yeah, that's really well said, man. I think you definitely dropped some really uh nuggets of wisdom there because I feel like I relate to that. I think high school came. I had dreams like most kids of playing at the next level and things like that, and that
Mm.
wasn't a reality for me. And then school came, and school was I was never like my brother. I know you know my brother. My brother, maybe I'll have him on the podcast at some point, but I mean, he's like one of the hardest working dudes I know. He's super smart. And he kind of found his niche academically really early on. Like for me, I didn't really find that until much later. And I think part of it was because I had so much invested in sports. And like you said, there were good things that came with it. There were good things that, right. I remember my and this is a thing in football too, where your coach will praise your toughness, right? Ooh, he's tough, man. Like he's gritty, and this concept of like, and I was like, oh, like I've never heard that before, and I was drawn to that, like that idea, and so it's some of it I think is good, and obviously other parts of it don't really translate well to other aspects of life, but anyway, I relate to a lot of what you said, and I'm sure a lot of people out there, especially young athletes, um, can relate to what you're saying. Um, so I want to shift. Like, what inspired you to do ministry? In kind of how you got into that.
Yeah, I think what inspired me, because I think God built in me just he built me as a visionary. I really believe that 100%.
Mm,
Like there's something about being able to see the value in what someone can accomplish in their lives, you know?
mm,
And I think when it comes to ministry, some people do it for the wrong reasons, right? Like,
mm-hmm.
okay, I'm doing ministry for the same reasons we just talked about with the sport. That can be the same thing that people do ministry for, right? It's
Right,
for
right,
that affirmation to fill that empty place, right? That because ministry brings a sense of identity and worth. It's
right,
crazy because you already had identity and worth before you even did ministry to begin with. And
right.
so, anyways, but that's a whole other thing I could talk about later. But I
Yeah.
think what I love about ministry, man, is like the fact that God is able to use me, a man
Mm,
who is broken and healing, right?
mm,
Who has grown up with that background that I just talked about earlier,
mm,
and that can still use me as a vessel to help someone else see the best in themselves. Like
Yeah.
that to me is so rewarding.
Mm.
Um, and it's rewarding not because it fills an empty place in me. Let me
Mm.
make that very clear.
Right.
It's rewarding because of the way you're able to serve and help somebody else see themselves the way God sees them.
Mm.
I believe there is no greater reward and greater way to serve. And I love how ministry is able to do that for people. Like,
Mm.
I get really excited, man. Like when I hear when people have a vision, when they have a dream, when they have something on their heart, or even if they have a struggle and they need a breakthrough, it excites me.
Mm.
Even though they might be struggling and like, down in the pit, right?
Mm.
But when I see that, I'm like, oh man, let's go.
Yeah.
You're because of where you're at right now, you're right on the other side of a breakthrough. Like
Mm.
I just love to see how that's going to become someone's past as they're
Mm.
headed towards their future. That very
Mm.
moment, that very situation. So man, it's that's what excites me the most about ministry, and I see that
Mm.
in Jesus's ministry as well. I
Mm.
love how Jesus. I like to think about when Jesus was with Peter, and Jesus calls Peter the Rock,
Mm.
but we know Peter was a hot mess. Right? He
Yeah.
was struggling with stuff. He had all these
Yeah.
things he had going
Yeah.
on, but it's interesting how Jesus called Peter who he was before he realized who he was.
Mm.
He told
Mm.
Peter what he was going to do before he knew he was capable of doing what he was going to do. So,
Mm. It's good.
in every interaction that Jesus had with people, he always told them who they are becoming before they actually got there yet.
Mm.
And one of the things about ministry that I love is being able to be that voice for people.
Mm.
Like, okay, you might not see yourself as this, but this is what I'm going to say
Mm.
about you right now, because
Mm. Mm.
this is who you're becoming. But I'm going
Mm.
to tell you before you actually become it and you see it
Mm.
yourself. That's
Mm.
one of the most greatest things ever. I love
Yeah.
that. That's even the way Jesus and the way God sees us.
Yeah. Yeah.
We think he just sees us where we are now. He's like, nope,
Right.
I see you way more than what you see
Beyond.
yourself right now.
Mm.
And that
Mm.
that is one of the most greatest things in ministry that I love.
Yeah. Well, man, you look, you got me inspired, man. I'm sitting here like, wow, man, I'm ready to take it, take on whatever God has in store for me. So I appreciate you sharing that. I think I think, being able like that ministry, um, again, a lot of people go into ministry for a lot of different reasons. I myself went into ministry. I felt called. I wasn't doing ministry. I wasn't looking at ministry, and yet I felt like God was putting situations in my path, um, that were pointing me to, hey, this might be the work that you need to do right now. Like this is the good work I prepared in advance for you to do. This is it right now, and so. But I love how you just shared, just really speaking, um, words of affirmation and encouragement to people in such a way that helps them to realize their potential, and see what is true about them because God has said those things are true about them. And so I really love kind of what you shared about that. Now, obviously, you went into ministry, a passionate minister, a visionary minister. Um, can you share a little bit with us about why you stepped out of ministry and what that process was like for you? And I know because we've talked, I know that it relates a lot to your identity in Christ, amongst other things. So can you share? Well, as you share that, can you kind of get into to that aspect as well?
Yeah, no, that's great. When I saw this question on the sheet, man, I was like, yeah, this is a spicy one, man. I really liked it. I was looking forward to this one. So,
Mm.
so yeah, I think. Well, first off, I knew I came into the crossroads of making that decision when, um, I started dating Nobi. At the
Mm.
time, this was back in 2021, and I struggled a lot emotionally. Like I started to
Mm.
realize because when you develop a relationship and you start developing intimacy, Intimacy has a way of bringing out all your wounded places.
Mm,
You know, and I realized in my relationship with Nobi, I had a hard time, expressing my emotions.
mm,
I noticed that there was a lot of pressure I would put on myself to be this perfect boyfriend, where I had to say the right thing, do the right thing, serve the right way. And again, there's a healthy way to go through that, but for
sure.
me, it was a lot of pressure, man.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because she was putting the pressure on me. Let me make that clear.
Mm-hmm.
She was not putting that pressure on me, but there was a lot that I felt, that I didn't know how to express or even how to work through. And even my grid for the amount of vocabulary I had for emotions was very small. I
Mm,
mean, when you're in a close relationship with someone, you're consistently expressing how's your day, how are you feeling?
mm,
And then the more those questions came my way, the more stuck I felt, man. I was like,
mm.
okay, all I know is, okay, I feel happy, I feel sad, um, I feel encouraged,
Right.
um, I feel that, man, I think I got three words for you. Like, that's about it, you know?
Mm,
So I had no idea how to express my emotions, but it also really frustrated me
right.
because I'm trying to connect, and I always felt like I wasn't given enough.
Mm,
And so it caused me to then become an enemy to myself by beating myself up because I couldn't express my emotion.
mm,
And
mm,
so it was really difficult. But then I look back at my history and I realize, you know what, maybe I should visit some of that and kind of see how that affected me. Like, what are things that I've been through? What are things that I've,
mm,
what I realize is that I'm a huge, like, I'm huge on, like, now really being in touch with how you feel and
mm.
nurturing yourself in a way where you're able to identify your emotions, where you're able to, like,
Yeah.
express how you feel in a healthy way. But for me, I realized I never had a reference for that growing up, because every time I'm, like, struggling with something, I always try to go back and see where did it start. That's
Mm,
always my mindset,
mm,
because I realize that something that I'm missing now could be something that's connected to the past that I did not receive,
mm,
right?
mm,
And it's not to live my life as a victim of, like, oh, well, look what happened to me. This is the reason. Now, the only reason why I go back to my past is simply for recognition, not
mm,
for a pity party, not for, like, oh, woe is me. No, no, no. The reason why I go back to my past is so I can connect it to my future and my present, so that I
mm,
can see what is it now that God needs to fill what I once missed out on, right?
mm,
So I ended up going back into my trauma. I ended up getting some therapy, and it
mm,
was just wiping me out because I was facing things I never faced in my life. Like, I was
mm,
facing, like, all these different years of grief. I mean, I lost so many family members in the last decade, man. It's insane. I
mm.
think probably like 7 to 8 family members.
Wow.
I lost my closest relationship back in 2010 with which was my grandfather.
Wow.
And then after he passed away, I ended up finding out that he wasn't even my biological grandfather. So it
Mm,
was like there was a lot of, like, just family history that was really just complicated,
mm,
and so that threw me. So there was a lot of things I've been through in my life, like, even with verbal abuse, physical abuse, like, I've seen and been through many things. I was also bullied through middle school. So there's a lot of
mm,
these, like, times in my life where I never processed them out in a healthy way.
mm.
And they were just coming out at this time in my life. Like, I
Yeah.
realized I had all this unprocessed pain.
Mm,
And it was so overwhelming that I couldn't even do my ministry work anymore. Like,
mm,
it was like I was so overwhelmed by everything that I couldn't even, like, focus on, like, okay, what are we doing this week for, midweek? What are we doing? What are we planning? Like all the things I incorporated ministry.
mm,
It was really difficult because I was now becoming aware of all these things I never processed, and it was a lot. It was a
mm,
lot to carry at the time. And so I was at a crossroads of, like, okay, I got to make a decision. Like, because I started trying to do ministry while I was working through this, but it was just too much. So I had to make a decision of like, okay, now what am I gonna do? Like, am I gonna like just stop doing ministry in a staff position and
Mm,
just focus on my mental health and my
mm,
identity? Or and this is crazy because as I was thinking about that, which goes back to what we were talking about earlier, I also felt like if I left ministry, I was leaving who I was too.
mm,
Like I was
mm,
afraid of finding out that I didn't
mm,
know who I was once I left.
mm.
So there was
Yeah.
like this
Yeah, because
this
that
like
that
pull and
void that you
tug of
spoke on
like,
earlier, right?
yes,
Mm,
yes. And it filled that place for so long that I feared that I was no longer going to know who I was if I decided to leave ministry. But also my trauma was telling me that I didn't know who I was at the same time.
mm,
Like it was
mm,
just like this double thing. But I ended up coming to a place where I'm like, you know what, Charles, like you got to decide to God what's most important? Your
mm,
spiritual health and identity
mm,
or doing the works of the ministry.
mm. Come on. Yeah.
So and then I had to realize that doing the works of the ministry comes from the place that you're broken in anyway.
Mm,
Like
mm,
you're supposed to know who you are,
mm.
and from who you are and your identity and the fact that you're loved by God, like that's supposed to fuel the work of the ministry.
Right.
But you're trying to
Right.
keep the ministry first
Mm,
at the expense of what's actually the most important thing. So
mm.
it was just this huge thing. So God
Yeah.
gave me clarity, and I said, you know what? I'm gonna take the leap. I'm gonna take the leap, man. I'm gonna choose to step down, and I want to get to the bottom of everything that I've been through. Like
Mm,
I got to a point where I just wasn't afraid. I got tired of being afraid. I got
mm.
tired of living a life where I didn't know who I was. I got tired of like the constant struggle to always perform in order to like get affirmation and
Mm.
stay in this position so people can see me
Yeah.
as like a great minister and a great person. I got so tired, it got so exhausting that I'm
Yeah.
like, you know what? I'm letting it go. I'm gonna dig deep into my identity, and I'm not gonna be afraid of this. God's with me. He has my back. He's gonna help me to see exactly what I need to see,
Mm,
so that, and then He'll rebuild that foundation. And then when I come back to ministry, because I knew ministry is my calling, period.
mm,
Like I'm convinced of that.
mm.
But I had to go through a season of the wilderness for some time, find out
Yeah.
who I was, you know.
Mm,
And I'll even add this one thing because it's very similar to the Egyptians when they were, well, the Israelites when they were in Egypt,
mm,
was they spent 400 years in a false identity, right? They spent
mm,
400 years uh, living in a place that enslaved them,
mm.
and they didn't know who they were. They were lost. Um, they were enslaved. They were oppressed, right? And then God literally had to take them out of that environment
Mm.
to a foreign place, a foreign land, so that they can finally discover who they are. So they can
Yeah.
finally be the people that God called them to be. So they can finally, right? And that was the same thing for me. And I'm not saying ministry was the Egyptians. That's not what I mean. What I mean is because anything you can be enslaved to anything, even if it's good, you know.
Right.
So
Yep.
for me, when I was in ministry, it wasn't that ministry was bad. It was
Mm-hmm.
because ministry was where I got my worth and my identity from.
Mm,
So
mm,
God's like, I need to pull you out of that enslavement because that's an enslaved
mm,
life where every day
mm.
you got to get up and perform and perform and perform just to feel.
Yep.
No, that's slavery. That's no different than what
Yeah.
the Egyptians were doing to the Israelites, you know.
Right.
So I had to get up out of that environment. I had to go
Mm,
into the wilderness for some time,
mm,
and God had to rebuild me and train me to say, no, Charles, that's not who you are. That's what you did.
mm,
Who you are is Charles. You're a son. You're loved, and I'm pleased with you. I
mm,
want you to just spend weeks just learning what that means.
mm,
To be untethered by everything else that's trying to like take your identity, trying to fill that place. I want you to just know that this is who you are, Charles.
mm.
And it was hard, man. I remember the first day I stepped out of the street, I sat there and I was like, what I felt like I was having withdrawals, man.
Mm.
Like it was like I came off of a drug.
Right.
And I'm like, well, what am I gonna do with my life now? Like
Right.
all the
Right.
things that I used to do, like and I remember I was even considering like maybe I should just do a Bible talk still. Maybe I should still like it was
Mm.
like
Right.
but God
Right.
was
No,
like,
I hear
no.
that. That's crazy. And
God,
it's like
yeah,
it just
yeah.
you can I want to finish. I want to hear what you had to say, but it's kind of like the Israelites kept looking back at Egypt as if that was the promised land,
Mm,
right? They kept
yes,
looking
sir.
back like
Wow,
that's
wow.
that's the promised land,
Yep,
right? And,
yep.
and and I think as people and similar to what you share, we do that. We're like, oh, but that thing that I just left because it's familiar, right? It's safe to some degree.
Right.
It's although safe is relative because Egypt was slavery, right?
Mm,
um,
right, right.
so,
Yep, yep.
but anyway, sorry. Go
Good
ahead.
point.
With what you're sharing.
No, that's good. I'm so glad you brought that up, man. I'm so glad you brought that up because that's literally what happened. They
Mm,
were like, they were contemplating a place that enslaved them. Like
mm,
that's just insane, and
yeah.
insane that it was good.
Mm,
And
mm,
so yeah, so I think for me it was like, okay, like I'm taking this journey. I'm choosing to do it, and I want to be so secure in who I am that no matter what environment I go in, no matter who I talk to, that there's never going to be a pressure for me to be somebody I'm not.
mm.
Like that, like I can walk into any space and just be confident about who I am.
It's
And
good.
I made that decision, and
Yeah.
I'm like, that's who Jesus was, man. When I was reading the Gospels again during that time, I'm like, yo, no matter where Jesus went, no matter where he was, who he was, man. Like
Yep.
he was the Son
Yep.
of God. Like people
Yeah.
tried to like tell him who he was and tried to
Mm-hmm.
manipulate him and all types of stuff. Jesus was like, man, look, he was the same person everywhere he went, man.
Mm,
And nothing in his life was he was never um like he didn't need someone to tell him who he was in order for him to know who he was.
right.
That's how I would say it.
Right. Yeah.
He didn't need that.
Right.
He didn't need that. And so, but that was so foreign to me, man. And so when I started that journey, it is one of the best times of my life.
Mm,
And not a lot of people would say the wilderness is the best time of their life. I got to be honest with you, man. Like being in that wilderness for me helped me to see the things that truly mattered, man. And now
mm,
doing ministry is so freeing. Like
mm,
because there is
mm.
no expectation. There's no I'm doing this to get this result. Like
Mm.
no, like I'm not even tethered to whether how great the ministry does or not. Like
Right.
I'm just
Right.
like I'm just going to do my job and God's going to work, the spirit's going to move, and the results in the ministry, I'm not tethered to it. It's all
Yeah.
in God's hand, and I'm still secure in who I am. It's one of the most beautiful places, and it's worth it. It's worth any wilderness. I'm telling you, any
Mm,
wilderness in your life is worth it because that's where God is going to help you build a foundation that will never be shaken. I promise you, that's a fact.
mm,
And so,
mm.
yeah, that is
That's good.
that was kind of what it was for me.
Yeah. No, man. First off, I mean, there's so much that we could talk about in what you just shared. Because I think, like people may not go have gone through what you went through, or people may not have gone through what I've been through per se. But this idea of wilderness, man, it's biblical. Like we are going
Yeah.
to all encounter some form of a wilderness. And it's gonna, like
Mm.
Jesus when he was tempted by Satan in the wilderness, or in the he in the desert. Um, Satan challenged his identity. Like you said, like Satan was
Yep.
not like chipping away at, and the wilderness does that, right? You come to the end of yourself, you figure out who you are, right? It's like, or who, right? Or you don't know, right? You
Yeah.
realize you don't know who you are, and so I think that that's so. Again, very well said, man. Thank you for sharing that with all of us, and I appreciate your humility here, your vulnerability as well, man. Um, and so,
Appreciate that.
can you briefly just comment, like, because I know for men, sometimes they feel like emotional, mental health work is not really worth their time. If you could very
Mm.
quickly, because I do want to go on to the next question, but very quickly, can you just, give for that guy, that man that's kind of struggling in that place, could you pitch to them the importance of that?
Yes, yes. Yeah, man, I'm a big advocate for mental health, man, especially when you're able to take mental health and combine it with the Bible. I mean, it is just the crazy thing is that mental health is already in the scriptures. You just got to see it.
Mm,
It's already there.
mm,
But anyways,
mm,
I think for the men, this is my encouragement, man. I think deep down in every man, there is a pressure, right? There's a pressure to be somebody. There's a pressure to perform, to have a result. And for a lot of men, your masculinity has been measured by how much output you bring,
mm,
right? And how much results you bring. And unfortunately, that has also became your identity,
mm.
right? Like your identity is based off of what you do as a man, providing for your family, providing
Right.
finances, providing, there's so many things that, as a man, this world puts pressure on us. And
Mm,
so what does that do? That causes men to not really be vulnerable because
mm,
there's this pressure to make sure all this stuff is put together. So
mm,
I can't express my pain. I don't have time for that, right? You said people feel like I don't have time for that. Um, or, they feel like they have to, there's all this pressure from that. So then with pressure becomes also suppressed emotions, right?
mm,
Any type of pressure that's going on in your life, you that pressure tells you that you have to do this thing. So I don't have time to now express these things that actually take time to express, right?
mm,
Because pressure also creates this thing where you have to go, go, go.
mm.
So there's no time because when it comes to mental health is it's really a patience thing, right?
Mm.
Like you have to sit down, you have to process, you
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
express,
Yeah.
you
It's the
have
opposite of
to
go, 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 right?
oh, it's the complete opposite, right?
Right.
um so it means that your life has to slow down.
Mm,
So it's gonna, but the reason why it's hard for us for men to slow down is because we feel like if we stop, we cannot do the things that are going to actually validate our worth.
right.
That
Right.
means I have to stop doing that
Right.
and actually sit with these emotions, which, oh my gosh, like, and let's be real, like, they're scary. A lot of
Yeah.
men are afraid to really see what's underneath the surface.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of
Yeah.
shame. There's a lot of
Mm,
shame there. There's a lot of guilt,
mm-hmm.
right? I think shame is a big one for men. Like, there's a lot of
Yeah.
shame around our feelings.
Yeah.
Which I'm big on like learning how to not, learning not to have shame in your life over your emotions, and to instead have grace and have patience and have
Mm,
compassion, right?
yeah.
Because that's what's going to be what's needed in that place. But a lot of men, they grew up and they were just always told to suck it up,
Right.
keep going, suck it up, be a man, right? Whatever that means.
Right.
And so there's that narrative around their life. So no wonder it's so hard for them to really express their emotions and their feelings because they've been told all these different things about, right, about their emotions as well. And
Mm,
and I think this is also true too, and I would add this, is that, and I'll say this in the form of a question for the men out there: when there was an opportunity for you to be vulnerable, to share your emotions, and you did it, what was the response?
mm,
What was the response for
mm.
you when you actually got vulnerable about what you're going through in your life?
It's a good question right
Were
there.
you heard? Were you heard? Were you listened to? because however you were treated in your vulnerable state becomes your
Mm,
reference
it's good.
for every time you get vulnerable. So if you grew up and you were always like your parents didn't listen to you, they told you to suck it up, then what's going to happen is there's a greater chance of you not being vulnerable again,
Mm,
because now what's embedded in you is this belief that when I get vulnerable, that's going to be the result. And so we go through life with that belief system in our minds, and we never experience what true compassion means. We never experience what grace means. We never experience what it means to actually have someone to walk with us through our emotional state, right?
mm, mm,
And so a lot of men are carrying that, man.
yeah.
And I want to be a voice to men right now, a voice of compassion, and just to tell you, like, yo, what happened to you when you were a kid growing up? What
Mm,
what happened to you yesterday? What happened to you at any point of your life where you um got vulnerable and you weren't loved in the way that you needed to be loved? You
yeah.
weren't seen the way you needed to be seen. I'm here to be a voice to tell you that God will never treat you like that. And that's
Mm,
not who God is.
mm,
God is he's so compassionate, he's so caring, and he wants to see your emotions, and he wants to wrap his arms around you.
mm,
A lot of men just need a hug from God, man.
yeah.
Like they
Right.
just, what I'm saying? Like they just
Right.
need like just a hug,
Right.
like just like a
An
nurture and
embrace. Yep.
affection.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's crazy how Satan has built the narrative in their mind that if they share what's going on in their lives, that there's this like um that old story is gonna come up again.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm here to tell you, man, like God is not that. God is not the person that did not listen to you.
It's
Like
good.
God is not like you fill in the blank. Whatever you've been through in your
It's good.
life, you fill in the
Yep.
blank. God is not that experience.
Mm,
And God wants to renew and teach you what true love and compassion is in your struggles.
good.
And he wants to
It's
get
good.
rid of all the shame, all the guilt, and all that stuff that's
Mm,
there. So I'm here to say that to the men out there, man.
yeah.
You're loved. You're God's son, and he is so more than happy to sit with you in your pain and your struggle. And
Mm,
in that experience, you're gonna find freedom and healing.
mm,
But you need to let God in to touch that place.
mm,
Um, so
yeah.
that's all I have to say about
Uh, brother,
that.
man, you. I mean, I can't wait to go through this film, man. You are dropping some nuggets, man. So many
Mm,
moments, man. So many noteworthy moments. Um, and I want to ask, with what you know now, and very clearly, I'm listening to you, Charles. You believe this stuff, and Charles and I, along with our wives, we had a chance to go away earlier this summer, and I see it. This Charles, like he lives this stuff, and I can just tell, man, you believe in this, and I think
mm,
this is so in step with the scriptures. This is not contradict the scriptures at all. This is this is the truth of your identity in Christ lived out, right? Like
mm,
that's the journey here that Charles is taking us through here. And so
mm.
thank you, man. I just wanted to share that. But with what you know now, is there anything that you would do differently with regard to leading a campus ministry?
Yes, absolutely. I think one of the first things that comes to mind that I would do differently is I would lead the people by helping them to lead themselves.
Mm,
But the way I would do that is they would be leading the campus ministry more than I am.
mm,
And here's
mm,
what I mean. Here's what I mean by that. I would come more from an angle of I want you guys to tell me what you need. Like
mm,
I want to teach you how to figure out what your needs are,
mm,
and then how I can be a support system on helping you meet those needs,
Mm,
right? So it's more like I'm leading the ministry, because before, I think the way I did things was I just assumed that the ministry needed things a lot. Like I
mm,
assumed like this is where we need to go, this is what we
mm.
need to do,
Yeah.
right? And it's all just coming from just my own brain,
Mm.
um, in my own times with God.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, there'll be things that you can see, and you can see patterns and things like that,
Right.
and can still
Right.
have wisdom in how to apply things, of course.
Yeah.
But I mean, every campus student has to feel like they're such an important part and that their needs matter.
Mm.
And
It's good.
and that means being willing to go anywhere. Like
Mm.
um and also don't judge them for the things that they bring up either.
Mm.
Like really trust that they have the Holy Spirit in them, and that they have specific needs and visions and dreams. My job as a minister is to help them on the vision and God, the dream that God already has for them already.
Mm.
It's not me trying to impose, not even impose, but try to give them my vision.
Right. Right.
You know, it's kind of like when David came up with Saul, right?
Mm.
And David's like, he shows up and he's like, who's this uncircumcised Philistine that's trying to, like, like
Right.
take down the armies of God? Like, who is he? Like, I'm about to go out there and I'm gonna take him down. And then
Mm.
Saul's like, okay, if you're gonna do that, here's the way you need to do it. I need to give you
Right.
my armor, right?
Right.
I need to give you this and
It's
that.
good.
And David
Yeah.
puts it on, right? And David's he's so kind, he still puts it
Right.
on, and he's like, okay,
Yeah.
I'll
He
try
tries it
right?
on, puts it on
He's
for
like,
size. Yeah.
yeah, he's like, what's going, like, dude, I can't beat this guy with this on. Like this, what am I gonna do? Like, I gotta take on this man the way God prepared me to take on this man,
It's
right?
good.
So I think a lot of times, like, sometimes there's too much of even pressure on the minister
Mm.
to be the one to kind of cookie cutter system themselves into their members.
Mm. Mm.
And the problem is
Like have 100
that's
of
not going to
you.
work because
Right. Like
right,
100 versions of
right,
you everywhere. Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely not. Yeah. Like that's not going to work. Why? Because the way God made us, we're all so unique. We're
Mm.
all so gifted in so many different ways. We all have different visions and dreams, and like, what in the world? Like, I couldn't imagine a life in a world where everyone's just like me. Like, that is
Mm.
just, oh my gosh. Like,
Yeah.
ugh. you know? I mean, don't get me wrong. I love me. I love
Right.
me. I love me. I
Right.
love my unique self. I love the way God made me. But this world was not built and created for us to all be the
Good.
same and attack
It's
everything
good.
the same. Like,
Mm.
you have to really trust. And this is really going to challenge people who are in ministry, because you're going to have to, like, really trust the Spirit, man. You're going to
Right.
have to really trust that people already have the Holy Spirit in them, and they already have visions and dreams
Mm.
that are way different than yours.
It's good.
And so
It's good.
you have to meet them where they're at, not try
Yeah.
to get them to be on board with where you want them to be.
It's good.
Like, it's
It's good.
like, because God's already speaking to them. They already
Yeah.
have the Holy Spirit. There's already things in their heart. My role is I'm here to help you light a fire under whatever it is that's already in you.
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
And
It's
then
good.
when they tap into that gift, now you have a ministry where everyone's tapped into that.
Right.
Woof, what is possible
Right. It's
when
good.
each person is uniquely tapped into their own vision and dream?
It's good. Yeah.
What kind of church, what kind of ministry will build out of that? Like, wow. And I think the reason why a lot of ministries, okay, I'm kind of going off here. So, but
Go
I
ahead. Go
think the
ahead.
reason why
I'm with you.
a lot of ministries don't grow, right, and are struggling with that is because it's probably because you're trying to get people to do all of the same thing,
Mm. Mm.
and it's not working because that's not their vision,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
Because you have a communal vision, right, and then you have a vision where there's people that literally want to do things that they feel called to do. And so like that's what I'm here as a leader. I'm here to already bring out and help you build the vision, the dream, the
Mm,
needs that you already have.
yeah. But let me
I'm
ask
just here to
this.
help you unlock it. Yeah.
Yeah, let me ask this. Um, where does the mission play a role in that make? Because that's
Hmm.
I love what you said, bringing out that God given dream or vision in that person, and and I've
Yeah.
always kind of said, okay, well, that's great. They have that passion. How then can you utilize it to build God's church? Right. That's kind of the
Hmm.
mindset mentality that I often have with that. But where does the mission play a role in that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great question. Oh, I actually really love this question. So, what one of the things that I think as human beings in general, right? And we can even talk about the mission in this is that it's so much easier to have conversations with people that are already tied to what you love to do.
Mm,
That makes sense?
mm,
So, there's specific gifts that we have that I also believe was supposed to be used for the mission, because when you're tapped into your gift, who are the people you're mostly going to be around? The people that are already enjoying and being around the gift that you already
in
are
that,
cultivating in
yeah,
your life.
yeah,
So for example, if somebody's like, "Yo, I want to be a musician," right? Like that's what I feel like my calling, that's my gift. That's what I feel like how I can bring life and bring even God into spaces. Okay, so all right, I want to join this community, right? That's on my campus that has, it's just musicians, it's a group of musicians, right? It's a club, it's whatever it is. All right, that's your mission then.
mm,
Your
mm,
mission is to now cultivate your gift in a space where there's a mutual interest and there's a natural flow of connection and
yeah,
relationship, right? And it's not pressured. Like a
right,
lot of people feel like the mission is only talking to people by walking up to them and like inviting them out. Now, I am a product of that actually working, right? So
right,
I'm
right.
not gonna sit here and say like that doesn't
Yeah,
work.
yeah,
I'm literally
right.
here because that
Yeah,
happened.
yeah.
So, but how amazing would it be if you had each individual in your ministry that has tapped in, who are now aware of where they want to go and how to build their gift, and then they become part of communities that are cultivating that gift with other people, and then that becomes the flow in which you bring God to them.
It's good. It's good.
Like it's just
Yeah.
this beautiful like combination. Like even right now, like I'm in these circles with all these entrepreneurs, right? Because I found that my gift is entrepreneurship. Like that's what I love to do. I'm a visionary. I love to start businesses and things like that. So now I'm in this group, right? Because I had to think too, like, okay, after campus ministry, what is evangelism going to look like? What is
Yeah.
giving the mission
Yeah.
going to look like?
Yep.
So, but first I had to, and I said, you know what? How can I first find out what my gift is? And
Mm,
then when I find out what that is, I then become part of communities and groups and people that aren't necessarily just from church, but even more importantly, that are not part of, like I'm in groups with people who are atheists, agnostic. I mean, all types of belief. There's Christians in there too,
right.
but now that I've like have this gift, now I'm like my gift is the vehicle and tool to help people understand and know the mission and know about God and his in the gospel.
Mm, mm,
So, because I think a lot of people they're trying to bring the word to people and they don't even know their calling.
mm, mm,
Like
mm.
they're trying to bring the
Yeah.
mission to people without even knowing their own mission. Right?
Right.
It's like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then people get frustrated, and then they're like, and you ever notice people like, oh, I don't feel like sharing my faith, or I don't feel like doing this, or
Mm,
inviting people to church.
mm,
Um, and you know what I would say? I would actually ask a question and say, well, have you actually found out your purpose and like
mm,
what are you here to do? Like your
mm.
gift.
Yeah. That's good.
You don't have to share your faith with just complete strangers all the time randomly on the street. Like find out what your gift is that's going to help you to connect with the most people,
Right.
and then deploy yourself in that gift
Mm.
and be in those spaces,
Yeah.
and then let the gospel just ooze out of you
Mm.
as you're making those connections in the space that you already enjoy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so when I think about campus ministry specifically, I'm like, that would be so cool. Like, I will
Yeah.
probably have something where it's like, guys, we're just gonna spend a whole semester on finding your gift. That's it.
Mm.
We're just gonna do that. We're gonna talk scriptures, we're gonna preach about it. And then once you find your gift, we're gonna help you find communities on campus that are already connected to your gift already.
That's
And then
good.
that's how you'll
Wow.
reach people.
Yeah. I think thank you
That's how I'll
for
do it.
that. I think that's great. There's a lot of good stuff there. There's some stuff that even has me
Mhm.
thinking. We have a campus training coming up here on the weekend. There are some things that I'm like that you said that I really want to incorporate into my lesson and my teaching. But I think that you were sharing just in regard to spiritual gifts, and this is what I wanted to say. A lot of times with campus ministry, it's about obviously it's about production, right? You only have it's time sensitive. You have 4 years in any one given student to share your faith with them, find that person, study the Bible, make them a Christian, make them a lead, then make them a leader, then right. And I think a lot of what you shared is it takes time. And I think especially in campus ministry, it's hard, at least even for me as a minister sitting in the places I'm sitting in. Like I was trained very differently than some sort of traditional campus ministers have been trained, but I still feel
Yeah.
that pressure at times to be it to perform or whatever, and to get students on board with, hey, we have to seek and save the lost, which is true, right? But I think what you're proposing is like you have to help them find it in their context, which is more transferable to the next stage of life, right? And I think again
Right.
that transition, at least in our family of churches, has not always been very good. People really don't know what discipleship looks like outside of a campus context. If they learn discipleship in campus, right? So
Right.
again, I think you shared a lot of really helpful and really good things there. And so, was there anything else you wanted to share in that regard?
Yeah. I think I think what you brought up was a good point, because a lot of the things that's required for growth is slow,
Yeah.
right? Because you're talking about helping people find their gifts. It almost goes against the speed of how ministry's done from a college ministry standpoint, because you have this many months before the
Right.
next semester, you have this many months before the next year, right? There's a
Right.
lot of like time constraint. You feel like
Right.
you're on a time crunch.
Yeah.
Um, and I think my thing on that is, I think if you're not careful, you can try to do things fast at the cost of things that are the most important.
Mm. Mm.
And what I mean by that, for example, like if your ministry is really struggling with purity, right? Or your ministry is really struggling with certain things that take time to work through and marinate through.
Yeah.
Then what's going to happen is, you don't want the goal of getting something done by a specific time to overlook the things that are really going on in your ministry,
Mm.
that actually take nurture, right? I probably got to meet with this person 4 or 5 times.
Mm. Mm.
And I'll be real, I've been guilty of that.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
been guilty of that. There's been goals and things that I got to push and make sure it happens by the end of the semester. And then I don't but then that means I need to like spend X amount of time sharing my faith this one day, and but
Yeah.
like this brother is really struggling with this one thing that really needs attention.
Yeah.
But then I find myself in the situation of like, okay, like, am I willing to slow down and get time with them, right? Or what's more important, getting this goal done,
Right.
or helping shepherd this brother that's going through something?
It's good.
And I
It's
think
good.
that's what comes into conflict a lot with just the time crunch when it comes to college ministry, because
Yep.
there's only this X amount of months. But the thing is, people don't work on time crunches, man. Like,
Right.
like people,
Right.
like it's
Yeah.
like when you're working with people, it's like it's a journey, man.
Yep.
And I think so. All I'm saying is like, no, there's nothing wrong with having goals and having vision and wanting to make something happen, but you really got to ask yourself, like, if you're in a time crunch, like, at what cost is that goal and that time crunch? Like, what are the costs in that?
Yeah.
Like, um,
Yeah.
does it mean we then have to like pay less attention to what's most important?
Mm.
You
It's
know,
good. Yeah. I'm
which is
reminded of.
spending
Oh, I'm
time with
sorry.
people and connecting with people.
Go.
Go ahead. No, you're good.
No, I would say I'm reminded of, Jesus whenever he performed healings on the Sabbath, right? And the Pharisees ended up prioritizing one thing when they really didn't know the spirit of the law, right? The spirit, they were so
Right.
focused on the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law was love God, love people, right? And that
Yeah.
takes precedence, right? And so, I think kind of what you're speaking to, man. If right, I think I don't know if I'm confined, sort of getting two stories confused, but I think he mentioned like, hey, if you have your animal and they fall into a ditch, right?
Yeah.
Or right, will you not go and get it? Get that you love, that lamb, that animal that
Yes.
you love. Will you not go, or are you gonna wait, allow it to suffer, and get it
Yeah.
at another time? Right? It's like, I think what the spirit or the principle of, I think what you're sharing is like, I think we can't ignore the suffering or the hurt or the pain of people in favor of getting something done. Yes, that thing is still important. It's not that we should forsake the mission, right?
Right.
But sometimes people are stuck in a ditch, right? Sometimes people are stuck, right? Sometimes,
Totally.
right? They need help to get out, and sometimes God puts us in places for us to help them out of whatever predicament they might be in. So I think that's helpful, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally, man. I love what you shared, man, and just even tying it back to scripture, and even how the Pharisees were, man. It's insane, man. They had a hard time saying what was most important in those times. They prioritized the law and forgot. Like, even dude was like literally blind and he can see.
Yeah.
And what they didn't realize was that the Pharisees were more blind than the person that was blind who can now see. It's insane. They were blind to the fact that this guy was just healed. Like, what? They couldn't see that. All they could see was the Sabbath and like, oh, it's insane, man. But that's the reality. Like you said, we have to really, in wisdom, ask ourselves, what does God really care about more?
Yeah.
Is it really this goal we have to like reach this?
Right.
Or is it really the lost sheep who's stuck in a ditch and who left the 99?
Right.
That means leaving whatever it is that you think is more important and deciding to go get the one, right?
Yeah.
Like that mentality, that heart is clearly what Jesus was emphasizing there in that.
Yeah.
But,
I wanted to just
good stuff.
Share this the scripture that I quoted, because I wanted to make sure I was remembering it correctly. Matthew 12:11. He said to them, that is the Pharisees, if any of you has a sheep and it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will you not take hold of it and lift it out? How much more valuable is a person than a sheep? Therefore, it is lawful
Mm.
to do good on the Sabbath. Right. And then he healed the
Mm.
guy. He said, stretch out your hand, and he healed the guy's hand. But anyway, so I
Wow.
think speaking to that point, I think that's such an important principle in when you're helping in any service to people, but particularly ministry work, and really making sure we are valuing what Jesus valued in the same extent to the same extent that he valued it.
Mhm.
So I think that's really helpful. We're gonna close out here, man, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to just share with the people. I know you have a lot of different endeavors that you're involved in. Um, I want you to take
Yeah.
a moment and just share with everyone those things.
Yeah, yeah. So currently right now I am so I'm an entrepreneur, have one business currently, moving on to a new business with just coaching, and I'm basically helping current and former athletes to make money online on Instagram, on social media. So
Mm,
that's what I'm doing right now. That's what I've done.
it's dope.
And one of the other things I'm starting now is a group for Christian entrepreneurs, and
Mm.
it's called Kingdom. Oh man, Kingdom. Oh snap! I literally forgot the name. So it's
It's
called
simple.
King. What was it? Kingdom. Dang, just came out with it last night, like
Yeah,
literally.
yeah, yeah,
Uh, I'll let you guys know later, man.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
It's
I'll
Kingdom.
plug
So
it.
it's Kingdom
I'll plug it on my
Entrepreneurs trying to build
socials.
the
I'll
kingdom.
plug it on my socials.
Okay. Yeah, so it's basically a group of Christian entrepreneurs who now there are prerequisites to enter the group. You gotta have an LLC. You already gotta be really serious about starting your business. And then it's a group where we're just gonna inspire each other, have
It's good.
accountability, share each other's wins, encourage one another, build out offers for your business, like what kind of offer do you want to create. We do offer creation in there. And then twice a year, the plan is we go away for
Wow.
a weekend, and you just take time to plan. You take time to
Mm,
plan what your new year is going to be, or some new things that you want to do. It's going to be exciting. So
mm,
that's going to be coming out pretty soon. And then another group that I'm helping with along with other brothers is Men of Freedom. So it
mm,
is a group on helping break free from addiction. Um, it could be any addiction, but mostly it's like any stronghold in your life that you feel like you're at, where you feel stuck, you feel like you can't break free from it. This is the
mm,
group to be a part of, because it's all
mm.
about helping you break free from any stronghold that you're dealing with.
Yeah,
So, but we usually get mostly people that struggle with addiction in that space.
yeah.
But yeah, but that's something we have now. And
Cool.
yeah, so those are a few of the things
Yeah,
that
yeah.
I got going on.
Cool, man. And I'll kind of plug in any socials that you have into description of our videos and stuff, so people can get in contact with you, DM you, if they want to participate or feel like they'll benefit from the services that you're offering. So Charles, man, I want to thank you so much for your time, brother. Listen, there were questions we didn't even get a chance to really get into because, man,
Yeah.
I mean, there was so much here, brother, and I learned even just from the session. I can't wait to listen back to it. Man, I just want to thank you for lending us your mind, your time, your experiences, and thank you for your vulnerability, your openness, man. I pray to God that this helps many people out there, and I think it will. I do believe that God is going to bless
Yeah.
it, man. So thank you.
Hey man, thanks so much, C's, for having me on, man. You're such a great brother to me, and I'm so excited for you, man, and how this thing's gonna blow up, man. I think you're gonna have some great people on the call, and some breakthroughs are gonna be happening for people, man, as you continue to carry out your vision, bro. So thank you so much for
Yes, sir.
having me, man. Love you a
Yeah,
ton.
love you, brother. Appreciate you, man.
All
We'll
right, bro.
talk next time, man.
Yes, sir.
All right,
All right, brother.
peace.
Peace.